Justin Herbert to me in 2025 is a guy that he's on the must perform quarterback list for me. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Play Action Takes, Apollo Media's NFL podcast. And we are here. OTAs have begun. And last week we talked about a certain quarterback. Some would say it will be a must perform year for him. Last week we talked about Trevor Lawrence. And this week I want to talk about another guy I brought up in last week's episode, Justin Herbert. So without further ado, it's your boy Kush. Welcome back, Play Action Takes. Let's talk about Justin Herbert, man. And Justin Herbert for the Chargers is a very intriguing quarterback to me because this is a guy that ever since coming out in 2020, he's had a lot of hype. He has one of the best arms in the NFL I've seen in a long time. This guy can make throws like crazy throws, and ever since coming into the NFL, he put up like 4,000-yard seasons, 5,000-yard seasons, and he kind of fell off the next few years. He got to the playoffs, got the Chargers in the playoffs in 2021. And everybody knows what happened in that first round against the Jaguars, who we talked about last week. They blew a 28-point lead. The Chargers lose. And the next year, the Chargers failed to make the playoffs. Fast forward to this past year, they make the playoffs. Jim Harbaugh is your head coach. They lose against the Texans in a game where a lot of people were picking the Chargers to beat the Texans and advance to, perhaps maybe give the Chiefs a run for the money. And so Justin Herbert to me in 2025 is a guy that he's on the must perform quarterback list for me. He's already been not from like a contract standpoint, but to me it's a lot of people have put him in like the top 5, top 7 quarterback lists. You see like every offseason, every regular season, and might be a hot take from me, but in my opinion, Justin Herbert hasn't done enough yet to cement him into that top 5 category as a quarterback. But I will say that 2025, year 2 of Jim Harbaugh as a head coach over there, they have a lot of potential. I think their expectations are going to be high this season. Maybe not winning the division, but I think you should expect them to contend for the AFC West. Obviously, the Chiefs are still there. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid are still there. That AFC West is looking very, very tough, man. You've got the new look Raiders with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith coming over there. You've got the resurgent Denver Broncos, year 2 for Bo Nix. Sean Payton is over there. They're looking to make that next step. Then you've got the Kansas City Chiefs, who have ruled that division forever and ever and ever since Mahomes and Andy Reid have been there. And so I think, as always, the AFC West is going to be tough, man. And speaking of the Los Angeles Chargers, Steven, I was about to say San Diego again. Years after they moved to Los Angeles, I still fuck that up. The Los Angeles Chargers, not the San Diego Chargers. Speaking of the Los Angeles Chargers, I think this is a team that in 2025 can not only make the playoffs, but if Justin Herbert takes that next step, I think this is a team that can potentially and possibly be a contender. I'm not ready to say Super Bowl contender yet, but I think they've got the head coach. Jim Harbaugh is a hell of a head coach, and that this is a team to watch out for in 2025. But I want to do a little deep dive into to Justin Herbert, the quarterback, because that's a really hot topic, and the Los Angeles Chargers. So I'm gonna take you guys down a trip to memory lane. Actually, it's a funny story because in 2021, the last game of the season, it was Chargers and Raiders in Las Vegas. I was actually Here's a little Kush story time for you guys. I was actually in Las Vegas on vacation. It was my first time in Vegas. Um, you know, past 18 years old. I'd been there as a kid, but I couldn't do the fun stuff, right? But anyway, I was on vacation in Vegas, and one of our plans was to go to a Raiders game. And luckily enough for us, just the timing of the whole trip, it fell on like a win or go home playoff clinching scenario game between the Raiders and the Chargers, and it was a back and forth game, and Derek Carr and the Raiders ended up winning that game, and I actually got to see Justin Herbert, the younger version of Justin Herbert up close, the developing version of Justin Herbert up close, and it was a great game, and just to see Justin Herbert, on the field in the early stages of his career, are obviously now it's like 4 years ago, but just to see that up close and see how far he's come, I think he's made several strides in his career, and it's funny to think about because if just like let's play what if scenario here, right? Like, let's say in 2021, Justin Herbert and the Chargers had gone on to beat the Las Vegas Raiders. They would have gone on to play the Cincinnati Bengals in the first round of the playoffs. If you guys remember, in 2021 was the Joe Burrow legacy year. He took the Bengals on that run. I believe they beat the Raiders, and then they beat the Titans, and then obviously they beat the Chiefs. They lose in the Super Bowl, but to me, it's funny to think about because what if what if Justin Herbert had beaten the Cincinnati Bengals in the first round? Would there ever be a legend of would there ever be the legend of Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals? Fun to think about. But since that point in 2021, let's fast forward to year one of Jim Harbaugh last year. The way that they built this team, to me, that I really am a fan of, with not just Justin Herbert, but just any quarterback building around the quarterback is, you know, Jim Harbaugh really. One thing about Jim Harbaugh is he wants to run the ball, and he's one of those head coaches that he's gonna let the defense know that he wants to run the ball, and he's still gonna run the ball down your throat every single time. Pause, but but Justin Herbert, to me, is a guy last year. He only had 3 interceptions all regular season. He had 23 touchdowns during the regular season. So I think the groundwork for Chargers football had been laid last year by Jim Harbaugh, that they're going to be a primary run team even though they have a very, very talented quarterback. I think they were kind of figuring it out during the year. They ended up making the playoffs, and I think a big part of their success last year was they just didn't turn the ball over. They had a decent stable of running backs. Their offensive line was pretty good. They last year in the draft they drafted Joe Alt, number I forgot what pick they had, but in the first round, first overall for them. He turned out to be pretty good. Rashawn Slater, the guy on the other side, was pretty good on the offensive line. Obviously, they don't have him anymore. Joey Bosa, standout defensive player for them for years. He's now gone, so they're gonna have to figure that part out defensively. And I believe they re-signed Khalil Mack too. So I think I think last year is I think last year for the Chargers kind of laid that groundwork of what Jim Harbaugh envisions for this team in the future. And they did lose a few running backs, but I think in year two under Harbaugh's system, I think Justin Herbert is going to be more comfortable. Do I think he's going to only throw 3 interceptions again? Probably not. That's hard to do. Do I think he might throw more touchdowns? Maybe. But one thing about um, this team and the way they kind of approach the draft to me is kind of interesting because during the draft in the first round, they Jim Harbaugh went with running back instead of receiver, which I mean, kind of if you kind of looked at this team last year, and even just before the season started, during the like, some would say like right after the draft, a lot of the criticism for this team was they don't have another guy opposite of Lad McConkey, and I don't know if they added that stud receiver opposite McConkey, but they did get one of my favorite running backs coming out in the draft this year, Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. He had this guy's got a lot of Joe Mixon comps. He can be a third down back in the NFL, and so I think this team is going to be really fun and interesting to watch. Um, just because it's a fucking Jim Harbaugh, man. Like, who doesn't like watching Jim Harbaugh coach teams? I mean, I as a football fan love it, uh, except for when we're going up against them. But and that kind of brings me to I want to talk about the playoff game last year between the Chargers and the Texans, and I'm gonna I'm gonna kind of give you guys my evaluation of this game as far as like Justin Herbert, the Chargers from a Chargers standpoint instead of a Texans standpoint. I mean, you guys know how big of a Texans fan I am. It's gonna be hard to go to the other side, but here it goes. Um, I think the game started out in the Chargers' favor. They were kind of controlling the tempo of the game, and then obviously the one play that changed the entire complexion of the entire game was that C.J. Stroud like mishandled snap. He rolls to the sideline and just heaves the football down the field, and then uh, Xavier Hutchinson, friend of the program, Xavier Hutchinson, um, makes that incredible catch. But I think before that, I think the Chargers were controlling the game, and then after that point, and then really after halftime, they just imploded, and I think that's an area where Justin Herbert is gonna have to get better this season. Is just like understanding situations, just doing a better job of going to the next down, um, not trying to make the big play all the time, even though like we know he can with that arm of his, but but again, that kind of goes to what the 2025 Chargers are really going to look like. I think they're going to be a not a run heavy team, but primary run team, and they're going to attack off of play action. And I think honestly, that's the best um, formula for success for them. And Justin Herbert did have 4 interceptions in that game last year, something that I don't think anybody in the country outside of Houston thought would happen in the playoff game because he taking care of the ball so well in the regular season. And um, another guy that shined despite the Chargers losing 32-12 in that game is Lad McConkey. Lad McConkey is going to be in year two, the receiver from Georgia. This guy is probably their number one receiver, and I think Lad McConkey is set to have a big year. We talked about Brian Thomas Jr. last year for the Jaguars. I kind of see a similar impact. Maybe not like maybe he might not be an elite receiver um, just yet, but I think he's going to make a big impact for this offense. I mean, when you kind of look at it as far as like star receivers, he's really the only one they have. Their offense is really going to be predicated on running the ball, and they're probably going to use their tight ends a lot. Probably going to use their running backs a lot, and so I think Lad McConkey is gonna. Well, let me say this. I think the Chargers coaching staff hopes that Lad McConkey is going to get a lot of one-on-one where he can just make plays. And man, so now let's talk about 2025. The Los Angeles Chargers in the division. I tell you guys what. I'm not going to do a schedule review this episode, but I will kind of give my predictions on, division and like Pro Bowls and playoffs. So starting with the division, obviously, I would be a crazy person not to pick the Chiefs to win the division outright, number one. But I'm gonna go with the Chiefs. Obviously, like I I find it hard pressed to see them slipping out of the number one spot for the division, but I am gonna pick the Chargers to finish second in the division. And as far as the a lot of people are really 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 high on the Broncos, and I love Sean Payton. I like Bo Nix, but I think that not necessarily the sophomore slump is going to hit for Bo Nix, but I think it's going to be a. I think it might at the start of the season it might be an adjustment a little bit for him as a second year player, which honestly this is like a big topic of conversation, just in this city in Houston alone because of the whole C.J. Stroud sophomore slump thing. I think I think that year one quarterbacks, the ones that look really 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 good, it's so hard to replicate that in year two. Year two is where defenses start to really kind of game plan for you, and they start to play different coverages, and they really test as a quarterback. They really test your ability and you know processing ability before the snap and after the snap. So he does have a really really good coach in Sean Payton. So maybe he might handle that a little bit better than than other players. But I just think that I don't think the Broncos are gonna have a necessarily a dominant start to the season. I think they're gonna have a rocky start. They might find themselves within the thick of things mid-season, late in the season, but I don't think it's gonna be enough. So I'm gonna go with the Chargers finishing number two in the division. I'm gonna go with the Broncos finishing number three, and you know the Las Vegas Raiders are another interesting team where I don't really know how to really evaluate them just because of all the new parts that they've got. They've got Geno Smith at quarterback, Pete Carroll who's like freaking 100 years old, coaching that team. Um, Josh Jacobs is gone obviously, um, and yeah, I really don't know what to think about the Raiders. Maybe we'll do a future episode on the Raiders. We'll see. But um, 2025 Pro Bowl. I think Justin Herbert. I don't think he's gonna have an MVP year, but I think he'll be in the conversation for a dark horse candidate for MVP. Write that down. I think he might be. I think he's going to be a dark horse MVP candidate. Justin Herbert, dark horse MVP candidate. Write that down. Um, yeah, like it's year two uh of the Jim Harbaugh offense for the Chargers. So I think it's fair to say he's gonna have a pretty good year. Um, like if there's any year that he's gonna take that step, it's gonna have to be this year. And I think they have a really good chance to win the division. Justin Herbert, I'm gonna put him in the Pro Bowl. Um, and you know what? I'm gonna put Joe Alt, year two player, offensive line. Joe Alt's gonna be a Pro Bowler next year. Um, I don't know a whole lot about their defense. I know Joey Bosa's gone. They might struggle on defense on the defensive line a little bit. Khalil Mack is still there, so that presence in the middle of that defense is still there. Obviously, Derwin James, one of the best safeties in the league, stud, multiple time Pro Bowler. He's a shoe in for the Pro Bowl on defense, and it's the Chargers are just such a they're just always such an interesting team every year. They really kind of remind me of the Jaguars, who we talked about last week. They have they have the quarterback. They've always had the quarterback. Um, it's just a matter of figuring it out. And there's been times in the past several years where the Kansas City Chiefs just happen to have their number always. Every time these two teams get together in those divisional matchups, it's always a close game, and it always comes down to the last few plays, and it's always the Kansas City Chiefs. And hot take, I think the Chargers and the Chiefs are going to split their games in the division this year. It's not going to be dominance against the Chiefs like always. I think the Chargers, in that sense, I think they finally get over the hump. I think Jim Harbaugh wills this team to the playoffs, and you know, I don't know exactly what the seeding is going to look like yet, um, but I think it's a good bet for the Chargers to get to the divisional round of the playoffs. And the yeah, Justin Herbert is, to me, like, he's a very interesting, intriguing quarterback always. And you know, to end this episode, I kind of want to go on a little rant. You know, I've been talking up Justin Herbert for the entire episode, but I will say that I think, hot take alert, I think it's unfair right now to put Justin Herbert in the top five. A lot of national pundits, a lot of the national media in these quarterback top five, top 10 quarterback lists have always put Justin Herbert up there. And while he's been, okay to pretty good, like, the stats are there, obviously. I mean, the dude threw for 4,000 and 5,000 his first couple years in the league. So we know the arm is there. We know the talent is there. It's just, to me, if we're basing the top five list on success and playoff success, I don't think you can put Justin Herbert in the top five. Um, and this is I'm gonna bring up a quarterback and a kind of a sneak peek into next week's episode of Play Action Takes, to kind of get you guys a little excited. But I think if we compare Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott to Chargers quarterback um, Justin Herbert, I mean, people are people say a lot of the same things, have a lot of the same criticisms between the two. You know, the the criticism on Dak is he can't win in the playoffs. You know, is not a he's not a winner. He is overrated. He's just not that good. You know, I think you can say I think you can say all these things about Justin Herbert, and I think it would. I think people would agree. Like if you put both of their if you put both of their accomplishments out there, right, and you didn't put a name to either quarterback, um, I think people would say a lot of the same things about the two quarterbacks, which is really really telling because the popular opinion on Dak Prescott is so much like more negative and so much more different than it is on Justin Herbert. Where I think if you kind of look at it, I I would say Dak Prescott is better than Justin Herbert. Not necessarily top. I wouldn't put him in my top five, but I think he's better than Justin Herbert. Um, both of them haven't had playoff a lot of playoff success. Obviously, both of them had a lot of things go, you know, haven't gone their way. Justin Herbert, dealt with a crazy playoff collapse his first time in the playoffs, and then I hate to toot the Texans' own horn, but Justin Herbert had to play the Houston Texans defense this last time around. And for the Cowboys, I mean, I'm not going to get into it too much today, but going to save that for next week. But the Cowboys and Dak Prescott just they've gone up against a lot of good teams, and Dak Prescott hasn't been the best in those games. But I mean, you can kind of say that about any quarterback. Like Lamar Jackson hasn't been the best in a lot of these playoff games either. People, obviously Lamar Jackson's won two MVPs, um, and he gets the benefit of the doubt because of that, which is 100% fair. But anyway, back to topic. Justin Herbert, I don't think you can put him in top five conversations just yet. I like Justin Herbert. I'm a fan of Justin Herbert. Um, you know, the throws that he's able to make on a consistent basis, as far as like arm, like when this dude throws the ball, it just doesn't even look like he's putting any type of effort into it, and it's a fucking tight spiral on a rope to the receiver, and the talent's always been there. Um, Justin Herbert had so many expectations coming out of Oregon, and I think 2025 might be the year that he finally delivers on all those expectations. A lot of things are going to have to happen for him and for the Chargers uh, in order for them to take the next step, get you know get back to the playoffs, which everybody knows isn't a guarantee, and advance in the playoffs. And I think the next step in Justin Herbert's career, legacy wise, is going to be fun to watch because we're going to get to watch him become, this player that can play well in the regular season, get his team to the playoffs, and then become that playoff performer like Patrick Mahomes, you know, like Josh Allen has been, like Lamar Jackson has been, like all these guys have been. And I'm just really looking forward to it. Um, and the Chargers are going to be one of these teams that I'm going to be watching very very closely. Not only just uh, not only just as an NFL fan, but honestly as a Texans fan because this is a team that last season in the playoffs, if if a certain amount of things don't go your way, you might lose that game, and it's people are talking a different way about the Texans, and people are talking, a different way about the Chargers. And if they win that game the Chargers win that game, last year in the playoffs, people are talking about Justin Herbert in a completely different way. I think they're talking about, you know, is this a guy that can be a top five quarterback? Does he belong in the top five after that win? Does he, is he a future MVP candidate for 2025 and beyond. So, a lot of these things come down to a few plays, and the narrative kind of shifts one way or the other depending on who loses or who wins the game. But um, yeah, and that's gonna do it for this episode of Play Action Takes, guys. And I want to shout out our sponsors, Zing Zang. You guys can see the bottle behind me, and one of our other sponsors, one of my favorite spots to eat at, Big City Wings. Shout out to Big City Wings. They have a grand opening for their Cypress location today, and might be going there for dinner later. I don't know, but y'all go ahead and pack that place out in Cypress. Show Big City Wings some love, and thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to Apollo HU, the YouTube page. We've Play Action Takes has got a TikTok page. I'm gonna put that in the description down below on the YouTube. And thank you guys. Comment, like, subscribe, and that's gonna be it, man. Peace.